Hey, what's up, everybody? We have a new YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe right now. Leave a comment on the video. Share it with your friends. It's also a podcast, 3 and Out, wherever you listen with me, John Middlekauff, Apple, Spotify. We have you covered, as well as thevolume.com. We have merch. Check out. I got 3 and Out hats right now. Thevolume.com. Search the podcast. Buy some merch. Okay, let's do a little mailbag. You guys know the drill. Just my Instagram, at John Middlekauff. DM's wide open. Fire on them. Let's start with Josh. Big fan of the rest of the Volume family. Nerd Sesh, Timph. We like all those guys. As a Giants fan, what do the next few years look like? Our defense is finally coming together, on paper at least. And the young O-line is developing very nicely. Despite all of that, we have 0 weapons in an offensive league and seemingly no optimism this upcoming season. Yeah, I mean, I think the easiest way to get optimism would be to take a quarterback, and then everyone would be intrigued. But like you said, you lose Saquon, who's your best offensive weapon. Does Waller still, is he alive? Did he retire? I know he was banged up last year. He's been banged up for a long time now. Really talented guy in his heyday. But my guess is what happens is that you guys take a wide receiver and just try to Band-Aid it with Daniel Jones. But it doesn't matter how good your offensive line is and you could easily take an offensive lineman, but I don't think you'll do it at 6, is if your quarterback plays shitty and you don't have any wide receivers, and it's like hard to function in 2024. So I'm with you. I think they're one of the more intriguing teams. You can't rule them out for a quarterback. But if you're Brian Daboll, the way everything went last year, just how acrimonious the coaching staff situation was, I just don't know if you can risk taking a quarterback. Because if you have a 6-win season, are you getting a 4th year? I don't know, man. Love the pod. It's become one of my daily pleasures. I like this guy. What would you think if the NBA extended the play into the 5th seed? I think an additional round of play-in games would not only create more urgency, but would also make part of the regular season more meaningful, as most teams try to avoid the play-in. So they could allow the top 4 seeds to draft the play-in opponents they want to play in the first round. I also think for All-Star Weekend, they should try a 3-on-3 tournament to replace the All-Star game. I actually think you're onto something. Because let's face it, the regular season has been rendered meaningful in the NBA. Ratings historically low. They just don't feel like they matter. I don't hate that idea at all. I really don't. I mean, it's the NBA's worst nightmare that their 2 biggest brands are going to potentially play the 9-10 game. Like, that is a disaster for the NBA. That LeBron or Steph is going to knock the other one out immediately. I mean, that's a problem. And worst case scenario, because the 9-10 team plays the winner of the 8-9 game or the 7-8 game. Well, what if they lose that game? I mean, it could just be both those teams could not make it, which is not good for business. Even though that's the way the cookie crumbled. I love that idea. Everyone's a play-in, 10 to 5. So 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then, like you said, have the top 4 teams pick. So if you're the 1 seed, Denver, you get to pick. You could argue the NFL should do that as well. I'm never against picking opponents as a television special. And have the general manager and head coach sitting there. We want the Eagles. We want the Sacramento Kings. That is, we're in the entertainment business. The players, I'm not, clearly they hated like the draft. Remember the All-Star game draft? Players were like uncomfortable doing it. It's like, what are we talking? This is all entertainment. Okay. I'm a Seahawks fan since 2013. Bandwagon, I know. I live here in Seattle. We recently hired McDonald, the best defensive coordinator last year. Our offense is pretty good. Weapons everywhere. Logically, we hired the best DC available. Shouldn't our defense be much better next season and make us a real contender? Kind of like the Lions last season? Uh, he gave a Fugazi Friday. I pay YouTube Premium to get away from the ads, $15, but now a lot of sports-related videos have in-video ads. They're around 3 to 5 minutes of video content. When exercising, I have to pull my phone. These ads, game time, gambling. Yeah, I mean, why we build them in? This is business, baby. That's how we get around that. I would say on the Seattle thing is interior defense should be a lot better. But part of the Baltimore success is their personnel, right? Obviously, McDonald was really good last year. My buddy that worked with him the last couple of years called him the boy genius. Like, he's schematically a high-level guy. But they had fucking sweet players. I mean, their defensive line had a $100 million guy. Clowney had the best year of his career. Their two linebackers, you know, you could argue those two and Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw, best duos in the league. They had good DBs. They had a fantastic, I mean, Kyle Hamilton's a stud. Like, I don't know. I'd have to bring out your guys' depth chart, but Witherspoon's a really good young player. I mean, I think your personnel on defense is somewhat in question. Should you be better? 100%. And at the end of the day, your quarterback is still Geno Smith. So that's somewhat of an issue for your upside. What are your thoughts on the tax for a stadium? Seeing Kansas City vote no, I think more cities are saying no to tax for teams to build a stadium. I'm a huge sports fan. However, I don't think it's right for them to use tax money so they can make millions more for free. Then the stadium makes the team value skyrocket. I know why owners do it. If I owned a team, I'd probably do the same. No, you wouldn't probably. You 100% would. If you can ever have someone else pay for something, if you were buying $1 million home and you have to put $150,000 down, and someone else would put the $150,000 down and you don't have to, and you get to own the home, you would do that. Now, I'd be lying if this story doesn't interest me that much. I just simply do not give a shit. But I did read a blurb on Pro Football Talk that the city owns the stadium. Could be wrong. Chiefs fans. I'm pretty positive I read that the Chiefs don't own the stadium or the land. Maybe both. So I do think it can be complicated. Like, for example, I can speak on this because I lived through it. When the 49ers built Levi Stadium, they share in the revenue, but they don't own the ground, and they split the ownership of the stadium with the city. For example, Joe Lacob, he built Chase Center in San Francisco. He self-financed that himself. So he gets all the benefits. Now, part of it, he knew in California he would never be able to pass any sort of measure. Where the Raiders, because Vegas is a little shady, it didn't even go to a vote. It was a 12-person committee that just voted it, yeah. So when you go stay at the Bellagio or New York or wherever, you get an added tax that pays for the Raider Stadium. So I have no problem with someone not wanting to pay the tax. I wouldn't either, right? But I don't think, I think the situation of the ownership's a little more complicated, but I think it's just human nature. If in business, you could have someone else front the bill and you benefit financially, you always do it. So ultimately, my takeaway is they'll get this figured out. Clark Hunt, I think historically a little cheap. But if he's got to open his pockets for a couple $100 million, he's going to have to do it. Right. So I don't know. Obviously, it's a little bit of an older stadium. I do not think that they are a threat to leave Kansas City. But yeah, I have no issue if I'm just the average Chiefs fan making $75,000 in Kansas City voting no. I totally understand it. You know why? Because I know eventually it'll happen. You don't need my money. You can figure it out. But I also don't blame the owners or anyone in business for doing this type stuff. You always avoid costs whenever you can. Welcome to the real world. The thrill and excitement of March Mania is here. And DraftKings Sportsbook, one of America's top-rated sportsbook apps, is giving new customers a shot to turn $5 into $150 instantly in bonus bets. with any college basketball bet. North Carolina listeners, don't forget DraftKings Sportsbook is now live in your state. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code JOHN, J-O-H-N. New customers can bet $5 to get $150 instantly in bonus bets only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code JOHN. The crown is yours. I tailed your picks for the first time in the players, in the golf pool, at work, and did way better than I ever have. So thanks. No problem. Just out here giving winners. Also a big-time Ravens fan for 15 plus years. And it seems like the next 10 will be tough to get through the Chiefs. My question is this. Do you think Lamar can one day go toe-to-toe with Mahomes, Manning versus Brady style? Or do you think the entire AFC is screwed for a while? Texans are looking up as well, and do the Ravens keep up in the arms race? I think last year was a perfect storm. The Chiefs scored 17 points. They did not score a touchdown in the second half. You could have beat them. Lamar did not play very well. He was very uncharacteristic of the way he had looked throughout the season. And as someone with the Ravens told me, and it was pretty evident if you were sitting on your couch, now the offensive coordinator, I would say, no, first and foremost, was shitty. Todd Monken was terrible that game. Refused to run the ball. Run Lamar. It didn't make no sense. This is someone that had $5,000 on the game that no longer has $5,000 because the Ravens lost. But Lamar tried to play like Mahomes. Part of what makes Lamar great is the dual threat. And he just felt like the moment Mahomes had that first drive, it's like, I'll go toe-to-toe with you. Lamar, that's not the way you play. They would have won that game if Lamar ran for 100 yards. The previous game, and the reason I put money on the Ravens and why most people picked the Ravens to win the game, Josh Allen ran for like 80 yards the week before. Lamar is a better, more explosive runner. And they just kept forcing the pass against a team with like unlimited DBs. So, yeah, and this is where scheme matters. I ranked the quarterbacks, Mahomes 1, Allen 2, Lamar 3. But both Josh and Lamar, for them to be successful, like Patrick Mahomes doesn't have to run at all, can just throw. Josh and Lamar, their added element of running, because it's so elite, Josh a little more powerful, Lamar a little more explosive, is a huge part of their game. And when you get away from it, it limits your ability. Now, some things went wrong. Obviously, the Zay Flowers fumble, but Lamar also threw an interception into triple coverage. So, yeah, Joe Flacco beat fucking Tom Brady. Eli Manning beat Tom Brady. Peyton Manning's been beat by some random quarterbacks. It's about playing well on an individual day. We've seen Lamar had really good games. Obviously, he's won multiple MVPs. But in this playoffs, for a game and a half, because he did not play well in the first half against the Texans, they just didn't have enough firepower. His playoff resume has been pretty underwhelming. Second half against the Texans, awesome. He's just going to have to put together a couple good games. Now, maybe their defense is going to be as good, right? McDonald's gone. Maybe it's just not quite as good. Patrick Queen's gone. So, but I mean, typically they'll just find the next guy. But you know what I mean? I do think he could have, in a big spot, a good game. But he's got to do it first. Forever is like, James Harden eventually is going to break through. It's like, oh, no, he actually never did. And I hate comparing James Harden, who literally has quit on teams, to Lamar Jackson. That is not fair. But the point of, I'll just go, yeah, I think he can. But I know from a gamble, I'm not betting on it again. I'll promise you that. Right? And yeah, I just think now you could argue the Chiefs' defense might not be as good this next time around, but maybe their offense is better. So you're in a good spot. You have Lamar Jackson. He has some questions. And they're all revolving around games in mid to late January. If those are your question marks, you're in a really good spot. But I would say there are a ton of pressure on him. And, the difference between him and Josh has played outstanding in playoff games. Lamar is not. Josh has played outstanding against Mahomes. Lamar is not. So I by no means would write his story like as this is how it's going to be forever. But there's just kind of the elephant in the room as we work with the Ravens in the playoffs moving forward. Is this the time he figures it out? Or is it like it's always going to be one of the it happened to Peyton Manning for a long time. The guy just crumbles in the playoffs. And then 2006 happened. What were they down 24-3 at half? And then they won that game. Another thing, Ernie Adams said it on the podcast with Jules. That was Super Bowl. We all knew it. Both teams knew it. The Bears were not beating either one of us. Let's face it, if the Ravens had won that game, they had just beat the Niners like 70-10. They beat the living crap out of them. Got to take down Mahomes. It's hard. And maybe we just look back like no one ever beat Michael Jordan, really, right? After the late 80s. No one really could take down Tiger Woods when he had the lead. So it's just one of those things. Maybe it's just Mahomes. He's not going to win every Super Bowl, but he may win every AFC for a while.